A millionaire took a homeless woman to his ex-fiancée's wedding. What she did shocked everyone. Before we dive into this incredible story, comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Now, sit back and enjoy. William Lancaster, a self-assured millionaire, stared at the wedding invitation in his hand. It was from his ex-fiancée, the woman who had left him without hesitation for someone else. Now, she had the audacity to send him an invitation as if to flaunt her happiness. "Is this some kind of joke?" he muttered, tossing the envelope onto his desk. His friend, Damon Carter, picked it up and let out a whistle. "That's a low blow. Are you going?" William let out a dry laugh. "And show up alone like a loser? No way. Then take someone. Show her you've moved on." It was a good idea. But just taking any date wouldn't cut it. He needed to make an impact, leave Olivia wondering what he was up to. Later that day, as he left his office, still mulling it over, he noticed a young woman sitting on the sidewalk near a restaurant. She was clearly homeless, her clothes were tattered, and she looked unkempt. But beneath the dirt, her face was striking. Her messy hair cascaded over her shoulders, and instead of desperation, her eyes held defiance. On impulse, William approached her, hands in his pockets. "Hey, do you need money?" She looked up, but not with gratitude. Instead, her sharp gaze studied him as if deciding whether he was even worth her time. Then, a smirk formed on her lips. "What is this? Some kind of social experiment? You ask, and depending on my answer, you either toss me a coin or walk away." William's eyebrows lifted. No one ever spoke to him like that. "Come with me to an event, and I'll pay you enough to change your life." She let out a soft chuckle, shaking her head. "Wow. Do you always use dramatic lines, or just when you want to sound like some kind of hero?" Her sarcasm caught him off guard, but he kept his cool. "You just need to dress up, smile, and come with me." She tilted her head, amusement flickering in her eyes. "Oh, I see. You want me to be your pretty little decoration for the night." William narrowed his eyes. She was challenging him on purpose. "If you're not interested, I'll find someone else." She laughed out loud this time. "Oh, really? Because I don't see a line of candidates forming around here." His jaw clenched. How was she turning this around on him? She stood, dusted off her dress, and stepped closer, too close. "All right. I'll do it," she said, as if doing him a favor. "But only because I'm curious." William felt a strange tension in the air. "Curious about what?" he asked, suspicious. Her lips curled into a smile. "To see how far a man like you is willing to go." For a moment, William was speechless. Who the hell was this woman? Isabella sat in the luxury car, staring out the window as the city lights blurred past. She wasn't nervous, impressed, or even curious, just observant. William, sitting beside her, realized he had expected a reaction from her. But there was none. "You don't even want to know where we're going?" he asked. She turned to him, a smirk on her lips. "Someplace expensive, I imagine." William raised an eyebrow. "And you're not curious?" She tilted her head. "Should I be? You found me on the street and offered me money to be your date. That's already strange enough. But I doubt you're planning to sell me into human trafficking or something." William laughed. "No, nothing that dramatic. Just a social event." "A wedding, right?" she asked, watching his reaction closely. He stared at her. "How do you know?" She gave him a knowing look. "You have that look, a man trying to get revenge on someone." His jaw tightened. She was reading him like an open book, and he didn't like it. "And if I am?" She shrugged. "Doesn't matter to me, as long as I get paid." William smiled. He liked her attitude, but he still wanted to know more about her. Who was she, this woman who accepted everything so easily? Minutes later, the car stopped in front of an elegant beauty salon. Isabella stepped out without hesitation, following William inside. The place smelled of expensive products, and the moment they entered, a team of stylists rushed over. "I want a complete transformation," William ordered. "Hair, makeup, clothes, everything." The staff nodded, and within seconds, Isabella was seated in a styling chair. "If you want to change your mind, now's the time," she said as a hairdresser began untangling her hair. "Change my mind about what?" "Me. I guess I expected someone more impressionable." William crossed his arms. "Are you not impressed by anything?" "Not by this." She closed her eyes as the stylist began washing her hair. "I've been in this world before." William frowned. Before he could ask more, a stylist pulled him away. "Mr. Lancaster, let us work." He took one last glance at Isabella and left, intrigued. Hours later, the stylist called his name. William stood and walked toward the salon. When he saw her, he stopped in his tracks. The woman before him was unrecognizable. Her once messy hair fell in smooth, shiny waves. Her exhausted, dirty face was now flawless, her eyes accentuated by elegant makeup. The fitted dress flattered her figure, and the high heels made her look poised and confident. But what stunned him the most was her expression. She wasn't shocked or amazed by her transformation. Instead, she simply studied herself in the mirror, as if she had seen this version of herself before. "What is it?" she asked, catching his gaze. "You don't look surprised," he observed. Isabella smiled, an unreadable glint in her eyes. "Because I'm not." William crossed his arms. "Who are you?" She picked up the purse handed to her and walked toward him. "Someone who knows how to seize a good opportunity when it comes." The car glided smoothly toward the event William had dreaded but now eagerly anticipated. Isabella, sitting beside him, remained composed. He had expected some sign of nervousness, but there was none. "You're quiet," William commented. "I'm enjoying the silence," she replied with a faint smile. He frowned. "Most people in your situation would be dazzled by all this." She laughed softly. "Maybe I'm not like most people." William realized that pushing her for answers wouldn't work. There was something about her, something intriguing. Finally, they arrived at the luxurious banquet hall. Elite guests stepped out of limousines, flashing their designer outfits and expensive jewelry. Cameras flashed as photographers and journalists documented the night. William stepped out first, adjusting his suit. Then, he extended his hand to Isabella. Without hesitation, she took it. The moment she stepped out, the entire crowd fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Women whispered, trying to figure out who this mysterious woman was. Men watched her with interest. And yet, Isabella remained unfazed. With perfect poise, she lifted her chin. Isabella held her chin high, smiling slightly, as if she was used to being the center of attention. William guided her down the red carpet toward the entrance of the hall. As they walked, Isabella remained calm and composed, showing no reaction to the luxurious setting around her. "Follow my lead," William whispered. "Be polite, smile, and try not to attract unnecessary attention." She raised an eyebrow. "Did you bring me here to make your ex jealous, or to blend into the background?" William pressed his lips together without answering. "That's what I thought," Isabella said, amused. They passed through the grand double doors and entered an opulent ballroom, where crystal chandeliers sparkled under golden lighting. The room was filled with high society figures dressed in their finest. It didn't take long for Olivia and her fiancé to come into William's line of sight. Olivia looked stunning in an elegant white gown, her smile perfectly crafted to charm everyone around her. Her fiancé, Charles Montrose, was exactly the type her family would approve of: wealthy, traditional, and predictable. Olivia's eyes met William's for a brief moment, showing surprise, but then they shifted to Isabella and froze. Her expression subtly changed, as if she was trying to figure out who this dazzling woman beside her ex-fiancé was. With a calculated smile, William led Isabella straight toward them. "Olivia," he greeted her in a polite but cool tone. She blinked a few times before forcing a smile. "William, what a surprise. I didn't expect you to come." "Of course I came." He glanced at Isabella. "And I brought company." Olivia's gaze swept over Isabella from head to toe. "We haven't been introduced." "You are." Before William could respond, Isabella extended her hand gracefully. "Isabella, a pleasure to meet you." Her voice was poised, her posture flawless, and her smile held no hint of submission. Olivia hesitated before shaking her hand, clearly uncomfortable. "You look familiar," Olivia remarked. Isabella tilted her head slightly, her smile unwavering. "Do I?" Olivia forced another smile, but William noticed the flicker of tension in her eyes. Exactly what he wanted. Charles cleared his throat, attempting to ease the atmosphere. "Shall we toast?" He lifted his champagne glass. William nodded, but before he could turn, Isabella spoke up, her tone pleasant but carrying an undertone that caught everyone off guard. I hope you'll be very happy. Marriage is a serious commitment. I was once engaged myself. William stiffened. Olivia and Charles exchanged glances. Really? Olivia asked, trying to sound casual. Isabella nodded and took a sip of champagne. But it didn't work out. My fiancé decided I wasn't the right choice for his family. A cold sensation ran through William. She was sending a clear message, and Olivia caught it. Her ex-fiancé's eyes narrowed slightly. That's an interesting coincidence, Olivia murmured. Isabella smiled. I think so too. An awkward silence settled between them. William could see Olivia struggling to maintain her composure. Finally, Isabella turned to William and lightly touched his arm. Would you like to dance? He blinked in surprise. Dance? Yes. Or would you rather stay here and watch your ex try to figure out where she knows me from? William chuckled softly. He liked this game she was playing. Let's dance. As they moved gracefully across the dance floor to the orchestra's melody, William locked eyes with Isabella. You did that on purpose. She smiled. Didn't I tell you? I've been in this world before. A mix of irritation and admiration stirred inside him. Isabella wasn't just a homeless woman he had picked up. She knew exactly what she was doing. The music flowed smoothly, and as they glided across the ballroom, William watched her, trying to figure her out. Isabella remained composed, her lips curving into a knowing smile. You keep surprising me, he murmured as he led her expertly. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? She asked, raising an eyebrow. I haven't decided yet. She laughed softly, her eyes twinkling. I think you already know I'm not exactly what I seem. I've realized that you know more about this world than you should. Isabella tilted her head. Let's just say I've been surrounded by people like this before. Before William could ask more, a group of businessmen approached, holding champagne glasses and offering friendly smiles. William recognized them, powerful investors and business magnates. Lancaster, one of them greeted, shaking William's hand. You finally decided to show up at a social event. William returned the handshake. I thought it would be interesting to celebrate the couple. The businessman's attention quickly shifted to Isabella, his eyes filled with curiosity. And who is your lovely companion? Before William could answer, Isabella stepped forward and extended her hand. Isabella, a pleasure to meet you. Her confidence was effortless, and none of the men questioned her presence. Isabella, one of them repeated, studying her. You look familiar. She smiled playfully. Perhaps we've met at an event before. The businessman nodded thoughtfully but didn't push further. William observed closely. Isabella was blending in too easily. And what do you do, Isabella? Another businessman asked, intrigued. She picked up a champagne glass from a passing waiter, swirling the liquid before answering. I enjoy observing financial markets. The rise in technology investments has been fascinating, especially startups focused on artificial intelligence. A brief silence followed. William almost laughed at the stunned expressions around them. None of the men had expected such an intelligent response. That's a rather specific area of interest, one of them commented. Isabella took a sip of her drink, smiling. I just follow trends. After all, everything comes down to who gets the inside information first, doesn't it? The men chuckled, now at ease. Isabella had captured their interest. But William felt a growing frustration. She wasn't just fitting in, she was taking over. Before he could intervene, a tall man with an air of authority approached. Damon Blackwood, one of the country's most influential investors, known for his sharp instincts and ability to read people instantly. Isabella, right? Damon studied her closely. You seem very comfortable here. She turned to him with a polite smile. Maybe because I am. Damon laughed. I like that. And what's your relationship with Lancaster? She shot William a playful look. Just an interesting partnership. William's jaw tightened. Isabella was playing her own game, and he didn't like losing control. Indeed, William interjected, taking the glass from her hand and handing it to a waiter. Now, if you'll excuse us, I need to steal my companion for a moment. He grabbed her wrist and led her to a quieter corner of the ballroom. What exactly are you doing? He asked through clenched teeth. Isabella smiled. Just having fun. You're standing out too much. Wasn't that the plan? To make your ex jealous? William narrowed his eyes. You play very well, Isabella. She tilted her head. And you don't like it when you can't control the game, do you? Before he could answer, Olivia appeared beside them. I hope you're enjoying the party, she said politely, though her eyes studied Isabella with caution. Very much, Isabella replied smoothly, before William could speak. Olivia forced a polite smile. You know, Isabella, I feel like we've met before. Maybe. Isabella gave a slight shrug. The high society world can be surprisingly small. William noticed how Olivia pressed her lips together. And where exactly do you know William from? Olivia asked, her tone light but probing. Isabella smiled. I think it's more fun to leave that a mystery. Olivia let out a soft laugh, though her sharp gaze didn't waver. Mystery does add a certain intrigue to a story. She then turned to William. Can we talk for a moment? William nodded but glanced back at Isabella before stepping away. She simply smiled, as if she had everything under control. Out on the balcony, the cold night air contrasted with the city lights shimmering in the distance. Olivia's expression, however, burned with intensity. Who is she, William? Olivia asked bluntly, crossing her arms over her pristine dress. He kept his face unreadable. Isabella, my companion. She let out a dry laugh. Don't insult my intelligence. I know the kind of women you bring to events like this, and she doesn't fit the mold. William felt a surge of irritation. What exactly are you trying to say, Olivia? Her eyes locked onto his. Where did she come from? He hesitated just for a second, enough time for Olivia to catch on. My God, she whispered, realization dawning. You found her on the street, didn't you? William didn't confirm it, but his silence spoke volumes. Olivia shook her head with a disbelieving laugh. This is unreal. You brought a beggar to provoke me. His jaw tightened. I brought a confident, intelligent woman who fits in here perfectly. A woman who knows too much for someone supposedly living on the streets, Olivia shot back, her eyes narrowing. She doesn't belong in this world, or does she? William didn't like her tone. Don't play games with me, Olivia. You lost the right to do that a long time ago. She raised an eyebrow. Maybe. But I do have the right to know who I'm dealing with. Straightening her posture as if she had made a decision, Olivia said, If I were you, I'd be careful. That woman didn't come into your life by chance. Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked back into the ballroom, leaving William alone with his thoughts. Inside, Isabella could feel the weight of the guest stares as she moved through the room. People were curious, analyzing her, trying to place her. But she carried herself with ease, as if she had always belonged there. Then, Olivia appeared in front of her. You dance well, Olivia commented. Isabella smiled. Thank you. So do you. Olivia tilted her head. You speak well too. You know how to navigate an event like this. I appreciate the compliment, Isabella said smoothly. It wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. Isabella met her gaze evenly. You think you know me? Olivia chuckled softly. I don't think I know. Isabella kept her composure. Then tell me, Olivia, who do you think I am? Olivia studied her for a long moment before smiling. That's what I'm still figuring out. She picked up a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. But don't worry, Isabella. I always find out. She took a slow sip and disappeared into the crowd. Isabella remained still, taking a deep breath. Olivia was getting suspicious. And that was a problem. In the car, William drove in silence. The glow of the city lights reflected in Isabella's eyes, but she could sense his tension. You want to ask me something, she said. I do. He kept his eyes on the road. But I don't know if you'll answer. She smiled. Depends on the question. William made a sharp turn before speaking. Who are you, Isabella? She crossed her legs, looking relaxed. The woman you chose to make an impression on your ex-fiancée. No. His jaw tightened. You know too much. You act like someone who has lived in this world before. She stayed quiet. Pulling up in front of his hotel, he turned to face her. I had you investigated. She didn't look surprised. And what did you find? Nothing. You don't exist, Isabella. No records, no history. It's as if you erased your own life. She gave a small smile. Maybe some things need to be erased. Frustration flickered across William's face. I don't like mysteries. Then maybe I'm not the right person for you. She stepped out of the car, walking into the hotel without looking back. William sat still for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. She was hiding something, and he was going to find out. Inside her hotel room, Isabella locked the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. Olivia was suspicious. William was suspicious. She looked at herself in the mirror, the elegant dress, the flawless makeup. For a moment, she looked like someone else. Or maybe she was finally becoming who she had always been. Reaching into her bag, she pulled out a disposable phone and typed a brief message. He started investigating. Reply came seconds later. Then it's time for you to decide your next move. She deleted the message and exhaled quietly. She couldn't keep this secret forever. And soon, William would learn the truth. William was not a patient man. He liked direct answers, complete control. But Isabella, she was an enigma, and that unsettled him more than he cared to admit. That morning, sipping his coffee in his office, his thoughts remained on the night before. Isabella had knowledge she shouldn't have. She moved like she belonged in high society, yet she had no background, no records. It was as if she had erased her own existence. Picking up the phone, he dialed a number he hadn't called in a long time. I need you to look into someone for me. The voice on the other end chuckled. It's been a while, Lancaster. Who's the target? Isabella. William hesitated. No last name. That makes things interesting. What do you want to know? Everything. Where she came from, who she really is, and why she's hiding. Give me 48 hours. William hung up, leaning back in his chair. If Isabella was playing a game, he would soon see her cards. Later that evening, he decided to find her. He knew she was still staying at the hotel. When he arrived, he went straight to her floor and knocked. It took a few seconds, but Isabella finally opened the door. She was dressed simply, her flawless makeup gone, yet her confidence remained unshaken. Were you expecting someone? William asked, crossing his arms. She didn't seem surprised by his visit. Not really. But you don't strike me as the type to announce your arrival. He studied her. Can we talk? She stepped aside, letting him in. Who are you really, Isabella? He asked. She leaned forward slightly. Why does that bother you so much? William studied Isabella carefully, his expression unreadable. You walked into this world like you belonged here, but there's no record of you anywhere. Who are you, really? Isabella held his gaze for a long moment before finally responding, And what if I don't want to tell you? William let out a dry, humorless laugh. Then I'll find out myself. She sighed, as if weighing her options. Fine. William. I'll tell you a little. He leaned forward, waiting. I grew up in a world much like yours. Grand parties, powerful connections. But that world can be ruthless, especially when you become a problem for the wrong people. William's eyes narrowed. A problem? She nodded. My family had influence. My father ran businesses worth millions. But one betrayal changed everything overnight. We lost it all. William frowned. Who betrayed you? Her eyes darkened. Someone I trusted. He sensed there was more she wasn't saying. Why erase your past? A sad smile touched her lips. Because sometimes, disappearing is the only way to survive. A heavy silence settled between them. William knew she wasn't telling him the whole truth, but this was the first real glimpse into her past. So what now? He asked. What's your plan? Isabella crossed her legs. I'm still deciding. William stood. You can keep hiding things from me, Isabella, but I will uncover the truth. She didn't respond as he left the room, but he could feel her watching him. The next morning, William's phone rang. I found something, his investigator said. Tell me. You were right. Isabella isn't who she pretends to be. Her real name is Isabella Deo. William's grip on the phone tightened. Deo? As in Richard Deo? Exactly. William's breath caught. Richard Deo had been a giant in the construction industry, until his empire crumbled under scandal. He went bankrupt after being accused of embezzlement, the investigator continued. And guess who was involved in that scandal? A chill ran down William's spine. Olivia Harrington. Bingo! William went silent. So, Isabella's arrival wasn't a coincidence. Keep digging, he ordered before hanging up. That evening, William couldn't focus on anything. Isabella's face kept flashing in his mind, her defiant eyes, the way she carried herself despite everything. Before he knew it, he grabbed his keys and drove to her hotel. When she opened the door, her hair was slightly tousled, her expression unreadable. William, we need to talk. She sighed and stepped aside, letting him in. Didn't peg you for a late-night visitor. Didn't plan on being one, he admitted, crossing his arms. Now stop playing games and tell me the truth. About what? He took a step closer. Why did you accept my proposal so quickly? Her gaze flickered. Because Olivia Harrington destroyed my family. A sharp pang hit William's chest. He already knew, but hearing it from her lips made it real. She ruined my father, Isabella continued. He trusted her. She manipulated him, created fraudulent deals, framed him for crimes he never committed. When the scandal broke, everything was taken from us. He died before he could clear his name. William clenched his fists. And your mother? She got sick shortly after. She didn't make it. A long silence filled the room. So, you ended up on the streets? Yes. And I learned quickly, trust no one. William reached out, gently lifting her chin so she had to look at him. You don't have to do this alone. She pulled back. I don't need saving, William. He sighed. I know. But that doesn't mean you have to carry everything alone. A soft laugh escaped her lips, but there was no humor in it. You think you can protect me? He exhaled. I think I want to. She blinked. Why? He ran a hand through his hair. Because I don't know what I'm feeling anymore when I'm around you. I can't explain it. She studied him. Does that bother you? A lot. But I can't walk away. She looked away, clearly unsettled. This doesn't change anything. I know. And Olivia. Her name alone brought him back to reality. If everything you've said is true, then I don't know who she really is anymore. Isabella's voice was steady. But I do. And I won't stop until she pays for what she did. William remained silent. He knew he wouldn't be able to stop her. Then I'll be by your side. She gave him a small, bittersweet smile. Even if this ends badly? He stepped closer. Even then. Late that night, William's phone rang. We have a problem, his investigator said. What is it? Olivia knows Isabella is back. And she's not happy. William's stomach tightened. What's she planning? Not sure yet, but someone's digging into Isabella's past. His jaw clenched. Keep me updated. When he hung up, a weight settled on his chest. Olivia wouldn't leave Isabella alone. He had to act before it was too late. The next morning, William found Isabella sitting on the hotel balcony, her arms wrapped around her knees as she stared at the horizon. He approached slowly and crouched beside her. You know Olivia found out, right? I know. He exhaled. She's not going to stop. Neither will I. He studied her, the way her hair was slightly disheveled, the exhaustion in her eyes. Something inside him twisted. Isabella. She blinked, as if fighting tears, but one escaped. Without thinking, William pulled her into an embrace, holding her close against his chest. It's going to be okay, he murmured. She didn't resist. She simply closed her eyes and let herself lean into him. Neither of them said anything. There was no need. In that moment, without admitting it aloud, they both knew they were in this together. And Olivia had no idea what was coming. William couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Since his conversation with Isabella the previous night, His mind had been restless. Knowing Olivia was behind the destruction of Isabella's family changed everything. Now, it wasn't just about Isabella, it was about him, too. He had almost married a woman capable of ruining lives without a second thought. He needed to find out just how far Olivia would go to keep her secrets buried. That morning, while reviewing reports in his office, his phone rang. It was his private investigator. "William, we have a problem." "Go on." "Olivia is up to something. My sources say she's gathering information on Isabella. Looks like she's planning to expose something big against her." William clenched his jaw. What exactly did she find out? "I don't know yet, but she's already reached out to lawyers and journalists. If she's making these moves, she has something solid." He threw the pen on his desk and ran a hand through his hair. "Find out what it is before she goes public." "I'm on it. But I suggest you warn Isabella." Taking a deep breath, William replied, "I'm on my way now." When he arrived at Isabella's hotel, he knocked hard on the door. She answered quickly, surprised to see him looking so tense. "What is it?" He walked in without waiting for an invitation and shut the door behind him. "Olivia is making a move against you." Her eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "She's digging up information and planning something big. My investigator thinks she's about to expose you publicly." Isabella didn't look shocked. Instead, she let out a small sigh and crossed her arms. "I knew this would happen. And you're this calm about it?" She let out a humorless laugh. "William, after everything I've been through, do you really think a scandal will scare me?" He studied her, admiring her strength, but that didn't make her any less vulnerable. "I can protect you," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "I told you, I don't need a savior. This isn't about saving you. It's about stopping Olivia." Isabella stepped closer, meeting his gaze. "And what exactly are you planning to do, William?" He reached out, gently cupping her face, his thumbs brushing against her skin. "Whatever it takes." For a moment, she just looked at him. There was something in her eyes, something she quickly hid. "I don't want you to get hurt because of me." He smiled faintly. Too late for that. Before she could say more, her phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen, her face tensing. "What is it?" William asked. She showed him the message. "Be careful who you trust. The past always comes back to haunt you." William took the phone from her, studying the message. That was Olivia. Isabella deleted it without hesitation. "She's trying to intimidate me." William shook his head. "That means we're getting close." She nodded slowly. "Then we need to act before she does." The next morning, a scandal broke. Every major newspaper ran headlines about Isabella. Isabella DEO, from luxury to the streets heiress who lost everything, former fiancée of William Lancaster involved in corruption scandals. The media was ruthless, twisting the facts, painting Isabella as a woman trying to claw her way back into high society. Olivia had made her move, to the office. William read every article, rage burning inside him. When Isabella walked in, he stood up immediately. "Did you see it?" She nodded, tossing a magazine onto the table. "Olivia is trying to destroy me." Again. His fists clenched. "That's not going to happen." She let out a soft laugh. "You always have that absurd confidence." He stepped closer, lifting her chin gently. "Because I never lose." Her eyes flickered with something close to hope, but then determination took over. "Then let's make sure she loses this time." William nodded. "It's time to bring Olivia Harrington down." They locked eyes. Neither of them knew how this would end, but one thing was clear: Olivia had underestimated them. That evening, Isabella received an invitation. Private dinner at the Harrington Club. Select members only. Your presence is requested. She gripped the invitation tightly. William, sitting on her couch, read the note and scoffed. "This is obviously a trap." "I know." "Then you're not going." She lifted her chin defiantly. "Of course I'm going." William pressed his lips together. "Isabella, this is my moment, William. I'm not running." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Then let's make sure Olivia is the only one who loses tonight." The Harrington mansion was aglow, filled with influential guests. Isabella walked in alone, wearing an elegant black dress that radiated power and mystery. William was already there, blending in with the crowd, watching everything. Then, Olivia appeared. "Isabella," she greeted, her lips curling into a venomous smile. "Glad you accepted my invitation." "You didn't give me much choice," Isabella replied, plucking a champagne flute from a passing waiter. Olivia tilted her head. "I hope you've enjoyed the attention. The media loved your story." "I've gotten used to being the center of attention," Isabella said smoothly. "Something you always wanted, haven't you?" For a moment, Olivia's expression darkened, but she quickly regained her poise. "You've lost again, Isabella. No matter what you try, you'll never be someone." Isabella smiled. "You're wrong." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" William stepped beside Isabella, his presence making Olivia tense. He handed her an envelope. "Dear Olivia, it looks like you didn't read the papers today." Olivia opened it, her face draining of color. Inside was a complete dossier, documents, recordings, signed agreements, all proving her direct involvement in the scheme that had ruined the Deo family. Undeniable evidence. "This is fake," Olivia whispered, her hand shaking. "No, it's not," Isabella said, her voice triumphant. "And tomorrow morning, it'll be on every front page." Panic flashed in Olivia's eyes. "You can't do this to me." William smirked coldly. "Just like you did to Isabella?" She glanced around, realizing guests were whispering, watching. The scandal had already begun. Olivia Harrington was finished, Olivia's world was falling apart. She could hardly believe what was happening. "This can't be real," she whispered, her voice trembling. Isabella leaned in close, her voice calm but sharp. "Now you know what it feels like to lose everything." Olivia's eyes darted around the room. The guests who once admired her now watched in stunned silence. Her empire, built on power and manipulation, was crumbling before her eyes. Then, before she could react, the ballroom doors swung open. 2 police officers entered, followed by a prosecutor. "Miss Olivia Harrington," one officer announced firmly. She stiffened. "Yes." "You are under arrest for financial fraud, embezzlement, and market manipulation." The entire room fell silent. Olivia let out a nervous laugh. "This is absurd. I'm Olivia Harrington." "And now you're also a criminal," Isabella replied coldly. The officers moved forward, snapping handcuffs around Olivia's wrists. Panic set in. She turned desperately to William. "Say something." But William just looked at her with a cool indifference. "Your biggest mistake was thinking you'd never get caught." As she was dragged away, Olivia shot one last glare at Isabella, her eyes filled with hatred. "This isn't over." Isabella met her gaze without flinching. "For you, it is." And just like that, in front of the elite who once admired her, Olivia Harrington was taken away. By the next morning, Olivia's arrest was headline news. Her financial empire collapsed within hours as investors and allies abandoned her. Meanwhile, in William's penthouse, he and Isabella stood by the window, overlooking the city. "You did it," William said. "We did it," she corrected him. He smiled. "And now?" Isabella sighed, her eyes thoughtful. "Now I start over." A strange tightness settled in William's chest. "I want to help you." She turned to him, skeptical. "How?" He walked over, handing her an envelope. "This is a proposal for a new business. A company in your name." She blinked in surprise. "What?" "I want you to have something of your own. Your independence." She set her glass down, crossing her arms. "William, I don't need your charity." He chuckled, shaking his head. "It's not charity. It's a partnership. You have talent. You have vision. I just want to help you build something real." She hesitated, uncertainty in her eyes. "I don't know." He took her hands gently. "You've spent years fighting. Now it's time to build." She stayed silent for a long moment, then exhaled. "Fine. But on one condition." "What condition?" She stepped closer, holding his gaze. "I do this my way." William smiled. "You always do." The air between them shifted, something warm, something unspoken. She looked away, but he reached out, gently cupping her face. Isabella. She didn't pull away. And when he kissed her, there were no barriers, no hesitation. Just them. When she finally stepped back, she met his gaze and whispered, "Good night, William." Then, she walked away, leaving him standing there, knowing she felt it too. Days later, Deo Consulting was born, a strategic investment and analysis firm. Isabella poured herself into it, building her team, reconnecting with old contacts, reclaiming her place in the business world. William stayed close, never imposing but always present. Then, one night, he knew he had to say it. "I'm in love with you." She blinked, caught off guard. "William, I know it's soon, but I can't pretend anymore." She looked away, her heart pounding. "I can't." "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "I'm not ready for a relationship. I just got my life back. I need to focus on that." He nodded, even though it hurt more than he wanted to admit. "All right." She gave him a small smile. "You always understand. But I'm not a man who gives up easily." In the weeks that followed, William made sure she knew he wasn't giving up. Every morning, he left a fresh cup of coffee on her desk. "To keep you going," he'd say with a grin. Then came the dinners. "Is this a date?" she asked one evening. "Just dinner between business partners," he replied casually, "and the small surprises." One night, after a long day, Isabella found a bouquet of white lilies on her desk with a note. "I know you like coffee more than flowers, but I hope you'll enjoy these anyway." She chuckled, feeling something stir inside her. But William wasn't just trying to win her over, he was supporting her. When an investor tried to deceive her, William was the first to warn her. When the media twisted her story, he used his influence to ensure the truth was told. And when she had a rough day, he showed up with a bottle of wine and a quiet, "Want to talk about it?" For the first time, she let herself open up. Months passed, and Deo Consulting thrived. Isabella had built something real. But she couldn't ignore the truth. William was always there. Always. One evening, she attended a major business event, a gathering of the industry's biggest names. She moved gracefully through the room, her navy blue dress understated yet striking. Investors and CEOs took notice, but she focused on meaningful connections. Then, she felt someone watching her. Liam Bissett, a renowned French investor, approached with a charming smile. "Miss Deo, I finally have the pleasure of meeting you in person." She returned a polite smile. "Mr. Bissett, the pleasure is mine." He extended his hand, but instead of a simple handshake, he leaned in and kissed the back of her hand, a traditional but unmistakably flirtatious gesture. "I would say the pleasure is all mine," he said, holding her gaze. Isabella was used to such advances. "I assume you're here for business." "Business can wait a moment, don't you think?" He extended his hand. "May I have this dance?" She hesitated briefly, then decided to accept. A dance meant nothing. Liam guided her to the floor, holding her waist firmly but respectfully. They moved in sync, and she had to admit, he was a skilled dancer. "You dance well, Miss Deo," he murmured. "I've learned that a strong presence is essential in business," she replied smoothly. "And outside of business?" He leaned in slightly, his voice lower. "Aren't there moments when you just let yourself enjoy life?" She let out a soft laugh. "Are you always this persistent?" "Only when I find something that genuinely interests me." The music ended, but Liam didn't immediately release her hand. Instead, he led her toward the bar, grabbing 2 glasses. Liam poured 2 glasses of champagne and handed one to Isabella. "So, tell me, does a powerful woman like you ever make time for fun?" he asked with a charming smile. Before Isabella could respond, she felt a familiar gaze piercing through her. She turned and locked eyes with William Lancaster from across the room. His expression was unreadable, but the intensity in his eyes spoke volumes. Jealousy. William moved toward them with purpose, ignoring the greetings from others along the way. When he reached them, he stopped beside Isabella, his irritation barely masked. "Isabella, may I speak with you for a moment?" His tone was firm, his posture tense. Liam raised an eyebrow but maintained his polite demeanor. "Mr. Lancaster, correct? I've heard quite a bit about you." "And I've heard about you," William replied coolly. The air around them turned icy. "William, we're in the middle of a conversation," Isabella said, trying to maintain her composure. Yes, I noticed, William replied dryly. And as much as I'd love to stand here and watch this unfold, I have more important matters to discuss with Isabella. Liam remained composed but clearly picked up on the tension. Seems your friend here doesn't like sharing attention, he murmured to Isabella, amused. Before she could respond, William took a step closer. You've had your dance, Bissett. Now, if you don't mind, Isabella huffed, grabbing William's arm firmly. Excuse me, Mr. Bissett. I'll be back in a moment. She led William toward a secluded hallway, her steps forceful. Once they were away from the crowd, she turned to him, furious. What the hell was that, William? He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. I couldn't stand seeing that guy flirting with you. And that gives you the right to act like a complete idiot, she shot back. Did you even notice how you behaved? Did you notice how he was looking at you? He wasn't interested in business, Isabella. And if he was, that's my decision, not yours. William was silent for a moment, frustration clear in his eyes. You're right, he finally admitted. But I hate the thought of seeing you with someone else. Isabella took a deep breath, trying to rein in her emotions. I'm not yours, William. You don't get to be jealous. She turned to leave, but he grabbed her wrist gently. Isabella, wait. She spun around. What more do you want? I want you to listen. I've heard enough, she snapped. You need to understand that you can't control me. The tension between them crackled like a live wire. William stared at her, his gaze dark and intense. Then, without warning, he pulled her to him and kissed her. The kiss was urgent, desperate, filled with pent-up emotions neither had acknowledged. Isabella froze for a moment, but then, against her better judgment, she kissed him back. It lasted only seconds before reality crashed down on her, and she pushed him away. You can't do that, she said, breathless. William's eyes were heavy with longing. I know you felt it too. That doesn't justify anything. Without another word, she turned, got into her car, and drove away, leaving William standing alone in the parking lot. The next day, Isabella sat in her office, trying to focus on work, but her mind kept replaying the kiss. She barely registered the sound of the door opening until she looked up and saw William. You can't just show up unannounced, she said, keeping her voice steady. I came to apologize. She studied him for a moment. For the jealousy or for the kiss you stole? He sighed. Both. Good. Now, if you don't mind, I have work to do. William didn't argue. He simply nodded and walked away. That night, as Isabella left her office late, something caught her attention. Her car window had been scratched. Deep, jagged letters carved into the glass, beware. Her blood ran cold. Someone was trying to send a message. Then, her phone buzzed. A new text message appeared on the screen. Alone, you won't get anywhere. Know when to quit. Her stomach twisted. This was no coincidence. For a moment, she hesitated. She didn't want to call William, didn't want to give him another reason to act like her protector. But as her hands trembled slightly, she made her decision. She dialed his number. He answered immediately. Isabella. Someone vandalized my car, she said, her voice steady despite the fear creeping in. And I just got a threat. A brief silence. Then his voice, firm and unwavering. I'm on my way. 15 minutes later, William pulled up beside her car. He took one look at the scratches on the window, his jaw tightening. Are you okay? He asked, his voice gentler now. Yes, she said, crossing her arms. You know you can't ignore this, right? I know. William pulled out his phone and made a call. I need footage from the security cameras in this area. Find out who did this. Now. Isabella watched as he took control of the situation. He handled it with the ease of someone who had dealt with threats before. And despite her instinct to handle things alone, she felt a strange sense of relief that he was there. After ending the call, William turned to her. Until we find out who's behind this, you're getting extra security. William, I don't. This isn't up for debate, Isabella. Someone is trying to intimidate you. We don't take chances with threats like this. She met his gaze, saw the concern beneath his hardened expression, and for once, she didn't argue. The following days were filled with tension. William kept his promise. She had extra security watching over her, and every move she made was monitored. But the question remained, who was behind the warning? And what did they want? Isabella finally uncovered the truth. The attacks on her company were orchestrated by one of Olivia's former associates, a man determined to block her success. But Isabella wasn't one to be intimidated. Without hesitation, she arranged a face-to-face meeting with him. Alongside William, she made her stance crystal clear. "Did you really think you could scare me?" she asked, her voice steady. "Let me tell you something. I've lost everything before, and I survived. Nothing will make me back down." The man swallowed hard, realizing he had lost this battle. After that confrontation, the attacks stopped. Isabella had proven she wasn't an easy target. But as the dust settled, something else became clear. Throughout the entire ordeal, William had never left her side. He wasn't there to shield her from something she couldn't handle. He was there to support her. And that made her wonder why she was still trying to keep him at arm's length. One evening, while she was deep in thought at her office, William walked in. "It's been 3 months since you started the company," he said, tossing a small box onto her desk. Curious, she picked it up and opened it. Inside was a silver keychain with the letter I engraved on it. "To celebrate," he said simply. A warmth spread through her chest as she smiled. "Thank you." William studied her for a moment before speaking again. "Are you ever going to stop running from me?" Her breath hitched. "I'm not asking for anything," he continued. "I just need to know, do I have a chance?" Her heart pounded. She knew the answer, but she wasn't ready to say it. "Not yet." He noticed her hesitation and stepped back. "It's okay," he said, his voice gentle. "Like I said, I'm patient." As he left the room, Isabella let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She knew she was close to giving in. But when she did, it would be for good. And that scared her more than anything. The next day started like any other. Isabella arrived early, buried herself in reports and meetings, and finally had the chance to focus on growing her business. But something felt off. William didn't show up. He always found a reason to stop by, even if it was just for a few minutes. He didn't call, didn't send a message, didn't check in. As the hours passed, unease settled in her chest. By 8 p.m., she couldn't take it anymore. Grabbing her coat, she headed straight to his penthouse. She rang the doorbell several times. No answer. Her heart pounded as she pulled out the spare key he had given her for emergencies and unlocked the door. Inside, the apartment was dimly lit. The only sound was the low hum of the television. That's when she saw him. William was sprawled on the couch, covered by a thin blanket. His face was pale, his breathing heavy. "William!" Isabella rushed to his side, pressing her hand to his forehead. He was burning up. His eyes fluttered open, filled with surprise. "Isabella! You have a fever," she said, her voice laced with worry. "It's just the flu," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "I'm taking you to the hospital," she said, reaching for her phone. But William grabbed her wrist, stopping her. "No. I just need rest." "William, you're burning up." He managed a weak smile. "If I go to the hospital, they'll take my blood. I hate needles." Isabella sighed in frustration. "You're impossible." He closed his eyes, exhausted. Isabella got up and went to the kitchen, preparing hot tea and grabbing a damp cloth. Returning to the couch, she knelt beside him and placed the cloth on his forehead. "This will help bring down your fever." He opened his eyes, looking at her softly. "You didn't have to come." "Yes, I did." A heavy silence settled between them. Isabella didn't want to admit it, but seeing him like this tightened her chest. She spent the night taking care of him, changing the cloth, making tea, staying by his side. At some point, exhaustion took over, and she fell asleep on the floor, her head resting near his chest. The next morning, she woke up to the gentle touch of William's fingers running through her hair. "Did you stay here all night?" he asked, his voice stronger. She blinked a few times before sitting up. "You were in bad shape. Someone had to take care of you." He smiled, running a hand over his face. "I feel much better. I think I had the best nurse in the world." She chuckled softly and stood up. "I'll make breakfast." In the kitchen, she carefully prepared a meal: fresh bread, sliced fruit, orange juice, and strong coffee. When she returned, she found William watching her with an unreadable expression. "What?" she asked. Setting the tray down, he took a deep breath. "I love you, Isabella." She froze. "I know you feel the same," he continued. "I saw it last night. The way you worried about me." Her heart pounded. This time, she had no reason to deny it. "I love you too, William." His eyes lit up with happiness. "Finally," he murmured, pulling her into a tight embrace. She laughed against his chest, feeling ridiculously happy. "You're so persistent. And it was worth it." They pulled apart, and she handed him breakfast. As he took a sip of coffee, he suddenly said, "Take the day off." She raised an eyebrow. "What?" "I want to take you somewhere special." She hesitated, but after the night before, she didn't want to be away from him. "All right. Where are we going?" "It's a surprise." William drove her to a secluded cabin on a private beach. As soon as they arrived, Isabella was speechless. "William, this is beautiful." He smiled. "I knew you'd love it." They spent the afternoon walking along the shore, feeling the ocean breeze, talking about everything. Eventually, William sat on a rock, looking at her with a thoughtful expression. "What is it?" she asked. Sitting beside him, he took a deep breath. "Before I met you, I was arrogant, ambitious. I only cared about power and myself." Isabella stayed quiet, listening intently. "Then you came along. You challenged me. At first, I found it irritating. But then, I became intrigued." He met her gaze. "You were the first person who wasn't afraid to stand up to me. And that made me realize I was surrounded by people who only told me what I wanted to hear. You changed that. You made me see the world differently." Her heart tightened. "I never wanted to change you, William. But you did. You made me a better man. More human. More humble." Isabella smiled softly. "And I fell in love with this version of you." He took her hand, his eyes locked onto hers. "I need to ask you something." Isabella furrowed her brows, slightly puzzled. "What?" William stood up and reached into his pocket. Her eyes widened when he pulled out a small box. He opened it to reveal a sparkling diamond ring. "Isabella Deo," he began, his voice filled with emotion. "I want to do this the right way. I want to love you the way you deserve, with respect, with patience, and with all my heart." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Will you marry me?" She didn't need to think twice. "Yes." William smiled and slipped the ring onto her finger before pulling her into a deep, passionate kiss. At that moment, Isabella knew there were no more walls between them. This was just the beginning of something even greater. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Isabella and William walked back to the cabin. The warm ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and freedom. William held her hand tightly, as if making sure she wouldn't slip away. But there was no longer any doubt. She was his, and he was hers. "I still can't believe we're engaged," Isabella murmured, gazing at the ring that now sparkled on her finger. William chuckled, pulling her closer. "I knew this would happen. You just took your time accepting it." She rolled her eyes, laughing. "You never give up, do you?" "Never. Not when it comes to you." Her heart swelled at his words. She never thought she would find a love this strong, this real. That night, William prepared a special dinner on the cabin's terrace. Candles flickered on the table, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore created the perfect ambience. "You're cooking," Isabella teased, raising an eyebrow at the beautifully plated dish. "I wanted to impress my fiancé," William said, pouring wine into her glass. She lifted her glass. "To us. To our future." He clinked his glass against hers. "To the love of my life." They laughed, exchanged glances filled with love, and enjoyed their meal. After dinner, William took her hand and led her into a slow dance under the stars. "Do you remember the first time we danced?" he asked, swaying gently with her. She smiled. "At that business event. You were insanely jealous." He chuckled. "I was. But now I know I never had to be. You were always meant to be mine." She rested her head on his chest, feeling more at peace than ever. She didn't have to run anymore. Months later, the big day finally arrived. Isabella never pictured herself as a bride, but there she was, dressed in white, about to say, "I do," to the man who had changed her life forever. The ceremony took place in a breathtaking garden by the sea. White flowers adorned the altar, elegant chairs lined up for their guests, and the soothing sound of waves added a touch of magic to the air. William stood at the altar in a sleek black suit, his heart stopping the moment he saw her. She was radiant. Her hair cascaded in soft waves, and her gown was a vision of elegance. But what captivated him most was the pure joy in her eyes. As Isabella walked down the aisle, she held his gaze with an emotional smile. When she reached the altar, he took her hands and whispered, "You look beautiful." She smiled, blinking back tears. The officiant spoke about love, partnership, and the beauty of building a life together. Then, it was time for the vows. William took a deep breath. "Isabella, from the moment I met you, you challenged me. You never bowed down, never blindly accepted my decisions, and that's what made me fall in love with you." Her eyes filled with emotion. "You taught me to be a better man. You showed me that power and success mean nothing if I don't have someone to share it with. I promise to love you, respect you, and make you happy every day of my life." Isabella could barely contain her tears as she spoke. "William, I spent my life fighting alone, thinking I couldn't trust anyone. But you were persistent. You never gave up on me. And now, I know I never want to live without you." They exchanged rings, and as soon as the officiant declared them husband and wife, William pulled her into a deep, passionate kiss while the guests erupted into applause. It was official. They were married. Their honeymoon was perfect. They traveled to breathtaking destinations, soaking in every moment together. But even when they returned home, the magic didn't fade. Marriage suited them. William spoiled Isabella, bringing her coffee in bed every morning, and she returned the favor by preparing romantic dinners. Their love only grew stronger. Then, something changed. Isabella felt different, tired, nauseous. Something was off. One morning, she stood in the bathroom, staring at the pregnancy test in her hands. Her heart pounded. 2 lines. She was pregnant. Tears streamed down her face as she processed the news. She and William were going to have a baby. But when she went to the doctor, the surprise was even greater. Twins. Later that day, William came home and found her sitting on the couch, holding an ultrasound picture. He frowned. "Isabella, what's wrong?" She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "William, I'm pregnant." He froze for a second. "What?" She smiled and placed the ultrasound in his hand. "We're having twins." His eyes widened. Then, his entire face lit up with joy. "Oh my God!" He laughed, pulling her into his arms. "We're having 2 babies." "Yes." He cupped her face and kissed her deeply. "You just gave me the best news of my life." She laughed through her tears. "I love you so much, William. And I love you even more." The months that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. William became even more protective, pampering Isabella constantly. He talked to the babies at night, gave her foot massages, and made sure she didn't overexert herself. At their baby shower, surrounded by family and friends, they finally revealed the gender, a boy and a girl. Holding Isabella close, William whispered, "We built an empire together. Now, we're building a family." She smiled, her heart overflowing with happiness. "And it'll be the best one ever." In that moment, Isabella knew she had everything she had ever dreamed of: a home, true love, and now, a growing family. And for the first time in her life, she knew she would never be alone again. What did you think of Isabella and William's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more heartwarming tales. Click on the screen now for more incredible stories.